So I just watched Venom: The Last Dance. And listen, I've never been a humongous fan of these. I was kind of hoping this one would win me over. And there are plenty of things in this one that I liked. But overall, I don't know. It's about as good as the other ones. If you enjoyed Venom's 1 and Venom Let There Be Carnage, then Venom: The Last Dance will totally work for you. Probably. And by the way, this review, no spoilers. I'm not going to spoil what happens in the movie. This is stuff that you could get from the trailers and maybe things that other Venom movies have set up. But most of this will be pretty general. I'll make a more spoilery version of this soon. So what are you getting when you go see a Venom movie? If you enjoy it, you're looking for some action, you need this weird, wacky duo of Eddie Brock and Venom the symbiote, who are bickering like an odd couple, and it's kind of a queer romance thing. It's whatever you want it to be, but that is itself very entertaining and somewhat unusual. I don't think there's another superhero movie doing that, whereas there are other superhero movies that have action that I say is as good as these. But like really, that's it. And these movies tend to come out, I want to say, like later in the year. So maybe traditionally it's a part of the year where there aren't a lot of movies like this, so it's kind of fun. It is in the Halloween-ish spirit, although the movies have never fully embraced that. And I don't think Venom would make a good Halloween costume, but there's plenty of opportunities for that, I guess. So if you were all in on Venom and Venom Let There Be Carnage for those reasons, action, the goofball stuff with Eddie and Venom, then that is all still here. You'll still probably have a good time. If you were hoping that they would like make it a tighter narrative and maybe come up with some actual like emotional through line or have a really well fleshed out villain, then too bad. This movie also doesn't have one of those. I'm going to say, if I had to rank them right now, this is number 2. So I'd say Venom 1, probably my favorite out of all of these. It's the simplest. It has a bunch of pretty goofy bits, like when he bites the lobster, that are pretty memorable. And I think the fight scene where he fights all the guys in the courtyard is pretty good. Also, I think the motorcycle chase is fun. Then you've got this. I'd say this is my second favorite Venom movie now. Venom: The Last Dance. And mostly because I really don't like Let There Be Carnage. The Last Dance is sort of in the middle by default. But I do think I kind of have to like this more than Let There Be Carnage because it has ambition. It's going for a lot. And right off the bat, let's say nice things. I liked Eddie Brock. I still enjoy this character. I still enjoy this bizarre performance. It feels almost nothing like Venom. The more I read Venom, the less I understand what this ever was. It feels like a character from the comics who was in the second movie very, very briefly, but was teased as part of this movie in the second movie and does show up in the trailer for this movie. A character named Toxin, who is, and I learned this since watching the second movie, so I learned this like a month ago because I was not familiar with him. This character is a good guy who gets a Venom symbiote. And the Venom symbiote isn't like super homicidal. It's more just kind of dopey and wants to be violent, but can be convinced to not be violent, which is something that I do not think is traditionally how regular Venom works. But Toxin, who's Venom's like grandson, does have more flexibility, and the host controlling Toxin, in that case, Patrick Mulligan, is just like a more good guy than Eddie Brock, this jerk who wants to get revenge on Peter Parker, or Cletus Cassidy, a serial killer. So anyway, having watched these movies now and having read more comics, this is the Toxin movie. And you know what? As that, maybe it's even better. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Tom Hardy's fun. I do think that like there's a bit of schmaltz in this that works for me. In terms of the like, this is our last dance, Eddie. We have to team up or something or whatever. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think these movies feel like an era enough for this to be the end of an era. Right, like I think this is a 3-movie trilogy that under any other circumstances I'd just go, I guess they're probably gonna make another one after that. But because they've made this one so final, it's like, wow, look at all these great times we had doing stuff from those other 2 movies. Is a lot like this, wearing pretty much the same outfit, and you know, action sequences that looked about the same too. Like the Venom costume has never evolved, which I think is so strange. So like any flashback you're watching or any just random clip of Venom, you know, in full Venom suit, just like running down a street punching guys, that could be from any movie and you would never know. It's clear that Tom Hardy is very passionate about this character, and I respect that. I enjoy that he seems to be having fun with it. I don't think there were any other performances in this movie that I actually really liked. There were some characters that I liked more than others, and some performances I think were better than others. But never was there a character that I was like, that's a great character, and a performance that was like, that's a great performance. It was always one or the other, right? Like Chiwetel Ejiofor, fine character, fine performance, but like nothing super special here. He's playing a very generic kind of villain, and I wouldn't even say he's a villain. He's like maybe secondary or third. I mean, there's so many villains in this movie. I don't know what you would call him, where you would rank him, but like he's not that exciting. Juno Temple, I would say, is very not that exciting, kind of underwhelming, and I wasn't expecting much, but as someone who enjoyed her in Fargo and stuff, I was like, oh, is this going to be, like, is she going to have a bigger role in this? Nope. There's the family played by Rhys Ifans, who I guess is probably the second best part of this movie, just because, like, he's got a character, and the family has something. I think without getting into too many details, I think less would be more with them. The same way that I think other characters that get little kind of almost cameo bits, I think do have a solid balance. But that's really all the actors that are in this movie. Like I'm hard pressed to think of more. And there's a couple more like cameo-y guys and people that are like, is that guy gonna be in there? And then, you know, they are or are not. So I'm not going to say all of them. But yeah, like, so if you're not really hooked on this Eddie and Venom thing, there's really not a whole lot else for you. I will say, like, the action in these is, again, fine. I think there's a couple fun action sequences. A lot of them are pretty short, which I understand. And I would say the end really goes all out. But I don't know if, like, it feels as well balanced as some of the other ones. It's also a road movie, so it's constantly moving. It has this strange energy where you do feel like, all right, come on, guys, let's go. We got somewhere to go. But at the same time, there's no urgency. There's both a ton of urgency because of what's happening in the plot, but also like the minute-to-minute urgency doesn't seem to exist, which is kind of weird. It's strangely aimless. I'll say big picture stuff because this has become the whole trailers now is everything about Knull. I think everything in Knull in this movie was boring and pointless. And, you know, I think you need to introduce something to be hunting symbiotes if you want to have the xenophage be the big bad guy for this movie. And I think the xenophage as a thing, just like it's a monster from another planet that wants to eat symbiotes so badly and specifically wants to eat his symbiote. It was pretty effective. I think it had a cool design. It does interesting things that I don't want to spoil. But, like, I actually liked it. I thought it was cool. But that being said, any time where Knull was on screen, I was just, like, saying, I don't know, I'm gonna go get me the symbiote and I need it for this reason. I feel like we must have gotten the same bit of Knull exposition 3 times in the movie from different characters from different perspectives, but like I do not care. And he has so little of an impact in this movie that I'm kind of like confused. A lot of comic people, including I believe the person who created Knull, I don't remember if it's the artist or the writer, one of them was like, oh man, I can't believe how much Knull's in this movie. It's crazy plans for Knull in the future. And it's like, are there really? The one from this movie? Because, like, he's not really in it very much. And I don't know if they know this. This is Sony. Like, they will totally change gears if this movie doesn't hit. So even if Knull was the plan for, like, another Venom trilogy or a Spider-Man crossover, like, if this does not make more money than the last one, they'll just not do that. Which I think they should probably figure that out because they got to start filming that Spider-Man movie pretty soon. But I think that Knull's super generic, just, I don't know, just kind of pointless. And I think the marketing leaning so heavily on Knull would be like if the first Avengers movie had clips of Thanos in the trailer. You'd be pretty underwhelmed if you were a big Thanos fan. And especially if this was something that you weren't very excited about. Then they're like, by the way, Thanos is in this. You'd be like, whoa, wow, actually, okay. All right, now we're cooking. And then you get there and you know, just be like, what was even the point of any of that? It's funny. There's some funny bits in this movie. I think that a lot of it comes from the interplay between Tom Hardy, but Eddie and Venom, but also just like editing and small things. There's a couple of lines that hit like a quick cut in a way that I enjoyed. There's a very cute little through line. I don't know where this came from, where Eddie just can't find a pair of shoes. And he keeps trying to find shoes and they either get taken from him or they get destroyed or whatever. That can be fun. That kind of frustration of like, oh man, I hope this guy gets shoes. So then, like, if he was to get shoes, even though that doesn't really matter at all, it would feel like a victory and it'd be like, oh, awesome. You know, I don't know. That stuff works on me. But I don't know, it just sort of goes. There's stuff that happens early in the movie with Knull, where Knull just says, like, here's my thing. I'm gonna go get the symbiote I want so badly. Go get him. And that's why everything starts happening. But for a while, for the main characters, like, they're not really involved in that. The xenophage shows up and it's like, oh, wow, what's this thing? And then it kind of becomes clear to them. But it just feels like these are two characters, Eddie and Venom, who know they're in a franchise that doesn't really have a future. Because that's what this series has been about, is this last dance. This is the last ride for these two guys. And it's like, oh, would I have been better if I'd made other decisions? And I do think this movie leaves out a bunch of characters in a weird way. I didn't really care about Michelle Williams' character, but like, I feel like she probably should have been in this, right? Should have just shown up maybe at the end. I don't want to say he should do a little like Avengers Assemble bit where all of his friends are there, but it felt a little strange to me that we didn't get her at all. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think the direction was bad or anything. I do think they really went overboard with trailers. A lot of the stuff that you would have been excited to see in the theater for the first time, I think ended up in the trailer. There are some things that they managed to hold on to that I'm somewhat impressed by, but like, man, if Venom Horse was like not even in the trailer, that would have been pretty good. I think people would have come out of the movie been like, oh my god, the Venom Horse, but instead saw a lot of people coming out of the movie saying like, oh man, there wasn't even that much horse in it. And that's the difference in just expectations and something Sony's never been particularly good at. Yeah, as someone who like is pretty familiar with the Lethal Protector arc and every conversion of that, there was some things that were happening in this movie that I kind of liked. Overall, I think Venom: The Last Dance is okay. I think it is the second best one of these Venom movies. I don't think it should kick off a big trilogy. I think this should maybe be the end of it. And maybe Spider-Man can get his own Venom, played by an actor who's closer to what Venom's usually like, and give it the origin that makes it what Venom usually is. Like, pretty much just do Spider-Man 3 again, but make it, like, I don't know, a little better. But, I mean, compared to these three movies, Spider-Man 3 is easily better than all of them. But the idea that, like, we have to reverse engineer a Venom movie without Spider-Man, it feels like if we can be done with this, which would be great, then we could just do a Spider-Man movie with his own Venom. And maybe, you know, if you really want to do Knull, you could set him up for like a future movie, I guess. I don't know. I'm worried that Knull is going to drag, and like Venom is going to drag this Spider-Man thing down, because these movies just do not appeal to as many people as the Spider-Man movies appeal to, because the Spider-Man movies are good. Not all of them, but I think the base like expectation, Spider-Man Homecoming is so much better than any of these Venom movies at just like being a good movie, having a plot and characters and a villain that's developed over time, and just all that stuff. Whereas with the Venom movies, it's a bunch of action scenes, and then this odd couple thing is somewhat queer romance, whatever you want it to be. But like, I think that works for what it's doing here. The idea that we're going to take that and just put it into Spider-Man, I think there'll be people that watch the Spider-Man movies that will say like, oh, I don't really like this guy. I'm not super excited about Venom because I've seen those movies and I just didn't like them. And like, I worry about that. And I don't think it's divisive because the character is divisive. I think it's divisive because the movies just aren't super messy. But I will say this one is ambitious. It introduces a lot of concepts. So I understand why this one feels like one of the messier ones, as opposed to Let There Be Carnage, which should have a much narrower scope and still manage to not be as good as this one. I don't know. It's okay. It's not funny enough on its own to be like a comedy and win me on comedy, the same way that something like Deadpool and Wolverine did. I don't think it's a good enough like adventure action comedy movie, same way that something like, I don't know, Guardians is able to win you over there. So like, I don't know what this movie is doing well enough to get new fans.